Hello folks, this is Sullla once again. You're listening to another patch review. This one is patch 3.5, and this is the Karma rework patch, the complete reworking of Karma. I've heard that there were actually a whole bunch of bugs. This patch came out yesterday, and I heard that they had to take the servers completely down because there were a lot of bugs, but hopefully that's been straightened out, and now people are able to go ahead and use this one. It also is the patch where they're releasing Zac. I believe that they wanted to release Zac in the last patch, but there were too many bugs with him, so they kept delaying him for another week or two. Anyway, though, let's look then at what they've done with Karma. They have, they've kept her playstyle somewhat similar, but they've reworked her kit and honestly just made it a lot better. She seems to be, I need to see the numbers for her. This doesn't tell you the numbers, unfortunately, here in the patch notes. But on face value, her kit looks pretty solid. And in the champion spotlight, they have her both as an AP mid and as a support. So we'll see if she's better at one than the other. If she's able to do both, that probably means that she's too strong, right? Riot has a history of reworking a champion, and suddenly they go from being useless to being extremely overpowered. And that's what they did with Evelynn. She was never played, and then they reworked her, and she became like one of the three strongest champions in the game. So I don't know if that's happened with Karma, but we'll see. Anyway, what they did was they changed her mantra, her ultimate. They changed it so instead of having two charges of mantra, she only gets one charge. And I think that that made sense. It was having to keep track of how many charges of mantra you had. It was not good. It's better just to have sort of the one charge and have that in place for Karma. So I do like that change. And then her passive is it reduces Mantra's cooldown. CDR, cooldown reduction, is going to be very important for Karma. It always was before. It's going to be that way. Still going to be that way. So her Q now fires a straight line. It's sort of a straight line nuke, a straight skill shot in one direction. If it hits somebody, it deals damage and slows. Then the Mantra bonus is it deals extra damage. It leaves a little circle on the ground, and anyone inside gets slowed, and after a delay, the circle erupts. It's a little bit like Brand's Pillar of Flame, is sort of the way I can describe that. So that's just, there's nothing too special about this. Pretty standard stuff, just like a straight line, travels in a straight line, hits someone. With the mantra, it leaves a little area that you can't walk in or else you take more damage after a brief delay. It combos very well with her W, though. This is the reworked version of her Spirit Bond, her jump rope, as people like to call it back in the day. Links her to a target champion, deals magic damage over 2 seconds, and if the link is not broken, the enemy is rooted. This is a huge reworking of that skill. Karma's old Spirit Bond, it sped up allies, it slowed down enemies, but it wasn't really that interesting of a skill. Now, if the link isn't broken, the enemy gets rooted. That's a really big deal, and I need to see the actual numbers to tell if the root duration goes up with more points in the skill. If it does, people will want to max this quickly. If the root duration is flat, if it's a flat root duration, then this will be a 1 point skill, and people will just put 1 point in it early and then max it last. But the way that this works is, you link them, you toss out the, whatever this is called, focused resolve, you toss out your jump rope, and you just walk next to them and root them. And once they're rooted to the ground, you then use mantra for your Q, and they can't escape the brief delay that causes the extra damage. So it's a nice little combo there. And I like it because, well, you can kind of see what the obvious counterplay is. This forces Karma to get into close range. So it's a bit of a high risk, high reward setup. I just think that this is really strong. Like a point and click skill, not a skill shot, point and click that roots the enemy. It's sort of like the Morgana Soul Shackles ultimate, only on one person. But that's very strong. That's very strong. So if you're able to build Karma a little like sort of tanky, I foresee maybe people going for things like Abyssal or some other type of item that makes her able to get in close with the enemy. That's very strong. That's really good. And this also is useful as a support skill too. So we'll see. And then this is also why she'll be useful as a support is her E. If you're going to play her as a support, you'd max this first. Target ally gets a shield. And it's not just a shield, it also grants movement speed, which is nice. Those shields that do two things are always really impressive. So shield plus movement speed, that's a very, very useful support skill. For laning Karma, this would probably be the second thing that you would max. I would expect that you'd max Q first, E second, and 1 point in W. But again, without seeing the numbers, it's hard to tell. And then the bonus for this is it's similar to her old shield. If you use Mantra, the shield deals magic damage to enemies around the shielded unit. Allied champions near the shield gain half of that and are hasted. So basically, you get an even bigger hit. My understanding is you get a bigger speed boost if you use the mantra bonus on this. So if you want damage, you use this. The mantra bonus for her W is you get a heal. I typically don't see people using it that much. It just seems like the other two, the bonus damage on Q or the speed up and what is this? Is this a bigger shield? Deals magic damage. Yeah, this is a bigger shield and a speed up. I feel like the mantra bonus is more useful on Q and E. I don't really see people using it on W, but I mean maybe in a duel if you're about to die and you need to life steal to survive, but maybe. So her kit seems pretty useful overall. Seems pretty solid, but we'll have to see in practice. I mean, she could come out and the numbers could just be really weak. But it feels pretty good. If anything, I'm leaning towards her being strong, like being a strong choice more than anything. Now, the funny thing is now I will actually have 3 different skins for Karma. The new base one, the old traditional Karma, as they call it, and then the, what is it? Then, which one is it? The Japanese one, the Sakura Karma, that I bought as a joke when it was on sale many months ago. So yeah, now I have 3 Karma skins, hooray. I guess 2, not counting the default one. Anyway, so let's look at some of the other changes. For Akali, they made a change to the Twilight Shroud. So she's now immediately stealthed and revealed when she enters the Shroud Zone, and immediately stealthed when she casts it on herself. Revealed from stealth upon casting a spell or beginning an attack, rather than upon dealing damage. And delay on re-stealth increased. So the net effect of this is definitely a nerf to Akali. I'm pretty confident of that. Maybe an Akali player will come in here and tell me that's not the case. But the way that the Twilight Shroud used to work is there'd be this slight delay between when she first put it down. It would take like a second for her to, not a second, but like, I don't know, like 2 or 3/10 of a second before she would actually be stealthed. And then again, when she left the Shroud Zone, she would still be stealthed for I think about maybe half second, something like that. So this was what allowed Akali to do all these crazy jukes, because she would step out of the shroud and you wouldn't be able to see her for like another half second roughly. And that allowed her to get away. It was easier for her to get away. So the fact that she is now immediately revealed when she leaves the Shroud Zone, that is going to make it much harder to do those sort of big time jukes. And the other thing is now revealed upon casting a spell rather than dealing damage. So when she tries to do when she does anything that targets an enemy, now she is immediately revealed rather than having to wait to deal damage. That's also a nerf. And then again, delay on re-stealthing increased too. So you get the idea. This all adds up to a bit of a nerf to Akali, as I interpret it, and to make it harder for her to run out of Twilight Shroud and a little bit more difficult for her to attack while she's in it. So this is a way of targeting. A lot of people have been saying that Akali is very strong right now. So this is a way to target that. Okay, they fixed a bug with Anivia, with her this is her wall, could stop uninterruptible movement abilities. So you could stop like Malphite ult with the wall. And that's obviously a bug because Malphite's unstoppable force is unstoppable. You're not allowed to stop it. So, bug fix Ashe. Now they display her passive on the buff bar. I guess that's nice. A lot of people think that Ashe needs a passive rework because it's not that useful. Perhaps, we'll see. But at least now you can see it. Draven, they said that they have fixed this where the axes go, so that the axes won't be placed inside walls or terrain. That sounds good, but I've heard that in game that it's actually worse than ever, is what I heard in game, that it's still bugging out. So I like the idea, but it doesn't sound like they fixed that. Hecarim, I love the little rationales for these nerfs. This is a straight nerf, and it's a pretty brutal nerf to Hecarim, but the previous version did not offer enough opportunities for tactical decision making. With higher cooldowns, our goal is to reintroduce strategic choices, other than merely activating the ability whenever it is available. What they should have said is, Hecarim was too strong, so we are nerfing him. That's all they needed to say. So his W, his Spirit of Dread, this is what heals him. Cooldown increased goes up by 4 seconds at all ranks. That is a very sizable nerf. That's a big deal. This skill already had a longish cooldown, and now it's even longer. 22 seconds at level 1. That's a big deal. So the last Hecarim nerf was deemed not to be severe enough because it didn't really affect him, so now they are piling on more nerfs. And we will see if this causes people to stop playing him. I'm not sure that it will. Hecarim is still viewed as being strong, but there's an item nerf down here at the bottom that I'll get to in a minute. There's an item, the nerf to this item actually really hurts Hecarim as well. So I'll get to that in a minute. But Hecarim took a pretty big shot to the chin in this patch. He got hit pretty hard. Master Yi, they are this is apparently a bit of a clarification with his double strike swing time now scales with attack speed instead of being fixed. That's a nice little buff. That instead of being like when you build attack speed, which most people do on Master Yi, people like to build Phantom Dancer and Static Shiv on him. Instead of being fixed, now the swing time will scale with attack speed. This, though, they fixed a bug where it could critically hit turrets. Yeah, that's not supposed to happen. So this is pretty modest. This is not going to change Master Yi. Master Yi is never really going to be played very much, not unless they do a complete rework. Yi's thing is he outputs crazy damage. He actually has just about higher damage than any champion in the game. The trade-off is, though, he has no crowd control, no CC. He's very squishy. He gets blown up fast, and he's melee. So it's it's huge damage, but you tend to die really fast when you play Yi. So he's not used that much. Wind Slash fixed a bug where Riven could cast Wind Slash a second time after using Zhonya's Hourglass. I mean, this is pretty hilarious. People on the forums were like, how did they even find this bug? But apparently somebody built a Zhonya's Hourglass on Riven and found this out. So nice, I guess a nice bug fix. But really, would you actually even build Zhonya's Hourglass on Riven? She scales entirely off of AD. She has no AP ratios whatsoever. So that's just kind of amusing. Rumble nerf here. They didn't like the way people are using Rumble's ult. As it said, Rumble's ult is intended to be an area control effect. The idea was you'd put down that fiery ground from the equalizer, and it was intended to be sort of a crowd control / zoning tool in a way. You know, enemy team don't stand here. But people were just using it as a long-range nuke. As I don't think, as they said this, yeah, they were just using it as a long-range nuke. In fact, in one of the LCS games, over the Counter Logic solo mid game I'm thinking of from last week, in that game, Hotshot's Karthus went down to like 5% health, and then Dyrus was playing Rumble, and he saw Hotshot trying to run away, and he was just like, equalizer, and Karthus just died at like this ridiculously long range, just because of the range of the equalizer. So what they're doing is they're changing it so it no longer deals initial impact damage. The idea is the equalizer before dealt, I think it dealt a certain percentage of its damage immediately, and then it had a damage over time effect. So they're getting rid of that immediate upfront damage. And that's a nerf because, well, the immediate upfront damage was the best part of the skill. So they're increasing the damage over time. If you look here, total damage dealt across the full duration is unchanged. It's like, well, that's nice, but in order to get that total damage, in order to get that, make that unchanged, then you have to stand in the equalizer for like 2 seconds. And people typically, when they see it go down, they step out of the equalizer because they don't want to stand on it. I believe you have to stand in it for about 2.5 seconds now to get back to the old damage. And people just don't do that. They see this ability go on the ground, and they step out of it, of course. So unless you're a moron and you just stand there in the equalizer, or you're CC'd, of course, if you're crowd controlled, the damage is lower. So basically this is a nerf. It's less damage up front, and yes, maybe it is more damage over the full 3 or 4 seconds, but nobody stands in it for the full 3 or 4 seconds. So this is a nerf to Rumble, and because people were just using it as a long-range nuke, and that wasn't the goal of the skill. Also, Rumble's been a strong pick. He's been playing a lot in the LCS, and a lot of the Season 3 items are quite good on him. Seeker's Arm Guard is very good on Rumble. Leandry's is very good on Rumble. So some of the items that came out in Season 3 really benefited him. This is the same thing as the Anivia Crystallize. Trundle's Pillar of Filth could stop uninterruptible movement abilities, and so they just fixed that. One of the other things in this patch is this hasn't really gotten too much attention, but Udyr was completely reworked in this patch. I mean, a complete reworking of Udyr. And overall, I believe that this is a buff to Udyr, as I interpret this. I mean, we need to see more time for people to play around with this, but it feels like this has made him stronger, and we might see him play. People were still playing him. It's not like he ever completely dropped off the face of the earth, but he wasn't used that often. He wasn't used that much. So I did see some people still using him in competitive play, but we will likely see more of him. Udyr is interesting because he is a champ that literally for about 18 straight months, he was always a good pick in competitive play. You would always see people playing him. Top lane, jungle more often, but in top lane as well. And he's kind of fallen out of favor in the last 6 to 8 months. But we will see if this gets him back here. He is just a very versatile champion, and he can do a lot of different things, depending on which one of his skills you go for. Okay, so what did they do? This is possibly the biggest buff here, is they decreased the mana cost on all of his stances. It goes down to the same 35 at rank 5, But one of Udyr's problems was he always is very mana dependent. So cutting his mana cost really helps him a lot. He was one of the junglers that was heavily blue buff dependent, and in top lane he would also tend to run out of mana. So this is a big deal. Okay, they've also reworked his passive. Now instead of 4% bonus armor and MR, he gets 5 movement speed per stack. And this feels like it's an improvement as well. Super late game, it's not going to be as useful. But remember, this is not 4% of armor and MR. This is 4% of bonus armor and MR. Okay, keep that in mind. So, I mean, that could stack up to 12%. But again, even if you have 200 armor at the end of the game, I mean, that's fairly common, right? For a tanky champ, 200 armor. Well, about 100 of that is just from base stats at level 18. You know, you get like 80 to 90 armor at level 18 on Udyr or something like that. I don't know the exact number. So if you've got 200 armor, you only have like roughly 100 bonus armor, 100 to 200 bonus armor, and 12% of that is what? That's like another 15 armor? I mean, great, that's like 100 gold worth of stats. You know, that's nothing. Whereas movement speed is always useful. I mean, 15 base movement speed, that's actually very useful to get that. So, and it also works well for jungling, and it synergizes well with bear stance. So I feel like this is better. Personally, I feel like this is an improvement. Yes, super late game, it's not as good, but most games don't get the super late game. Big changes to Turtle Stance here. The biggest one, this is the biggest nerf that they've made to Udyr. They've changed it so Turtle Stance no longer returns mana while dealing damage. This is to get rid of the Udyr in top lane that would get ahead and then would just sustain endlessly with Turtle Stance. So this is, of course, a sizable nerf. Doesn't affect his jungling quite as much. I think that this shifts him a little bit more to being a jungler. I mean, I could be wrong. I have to see how people play him, but it feels like this shifts him a little bit more into being a jungler. The shield value they actually have increased, though. They've increased it as scaling. They've increased it at 5 per level, or 5 per additional point in the skill. So that's actually quite nice. They've increased the scaling, and you can now critical strike in Turtle Stance, which is actually a pretty big deal. Actually a pretty big deal because Trinity has long been one of Udyr's core items. And if you as part of that you build Zeal and of course have the chance to critically strike. So this actually does make a big difference. And remember, you get lifesteal. I mean, you no longer get mana back, but you get lifesteal in Turtle Stance. So the ability to critical strike on get lifesteal from that helps him quite a bit. Meanwhile, the other ones are just pretty much straight buffs, almost straight buffs. So Turtle Stance, they took away a little of the power, but the others are almost straight buffs. Udyr now ignores unit collision when the movement speed bonus is active from Bear Stance, and I believe I've even said in past videos, I've said this is one thing they need to do, make it so he ignores unit collisions with Bear Stance, and they've changed it. Granted, only when the movement speed bonus is active, not just innate to the stance, but I mean, that helps a lot because getting blocked by minions was a huge problem for Udyr, a really big problem. Okay, so also now performs a slight dash towards his target on stunning attacks. I mean, this is big. If this is his gap closer. Udyr has never had a gap closer. So on his stunning attack, he does like a tiny little dash now. This really helps him. Udyr's big problem is he's always had trouble getting kited. So yeah, that's a big deal. Can't be interrupted, can't be self-interrupted mid-attack. Okay, I'm not too familiar with what this means, but that sounds good. Movement speed also increased. It starts at 15%, but then goes up with more points. So again, a buff goes up. Now, granted, they have reduced the duration of that movement speed bonus. So it's only 3 seconds now at max rank instead of 4. Still, this is still, I would say, a buff overall because it's better to have a short high-speed dash than one that's a slower speed that goes on for a longer time. Again, as a jungler, which is what Udyr is typically going to be played, you come out of the brush, you want to close distance really fast, and so to have 35% over 3 seconds, I would say is much more valuable than 27% over 4 seconds. And you're going to be stancing anyway with Udyr, so it doesn't, it doesn't really matter. You're going to pop Bear Stance, and then a second later you're going to be going into either Turtle or Tiger or Phoenix. So I don't think that this really hurts him that much. I think that this definitely helps. It's going to make it easier for him to gank, easier for him to close distance to the target. Phoenix Stance got a big buff here because instead of the fire cone on Phoenix only proccing every 3rd attack, now the first attack after you activate Phoenix Stance will immediately proc the fire. This is a big buff to Udyr. Now you don't need 3 attacks, you get the fire cone the first attack, and on every third attack as well. So this is a very big deal. This means that you can stance very easily and clear jungle camps fast. Let's see, it doesn't grant bonus ability power and attack damage while activated. Okay, that is the trade-off, but I don't believe he got very much of this. I'd have to look back at this. And it's not like people really built much ability power on Udyr. Anyway, they did increase the AP ratio on this. So again, if you build Trinity, you build Sheen, you get a little bit more out of it. But overall, I mean, this is going to cause you to deal more damage. It's not. Most people didn't even realize that he got bonus ability power and attack damage while this was active. So definitely feel like this will allow people to clear the jungle camps faster, because that fire cone appearing every time you swap into Phoenix stance. It's just going to make it easier to stance and clear the jungle rapidly by going Phoenix, then Turtle, then Phoenix again, and so on. Now, there's no mention of Tiger stance in here. They left that unchanged, apparently. On the PvE environment, they had changed the Tiger stance damage from magical to physical, and I don't see that in the patch notes, so I'm guessing that did not go into the final version of the game. Most people were interpreting that as a nerf, that they were going to change the Tiger stance damage from magical to physical. Most people thought that would be a nerf, but they have not done that. So that is helpful to laning Udyr. Laning Udyr typically goes Tiger. The jungle Udyr typically goes Phoenix. I have seen some people have had success building Blade of the Ruined King and like Zephyr on Udyr in top lane. I have seen people do that and actually do so quite successfully. So people are going to be testing out Udyr, and I think that this definitely helps him. I mean, it's more of a rework than a straight buff, but I think that the changes are good, and I think that they help him overall. So anyway, that was a lot to get through, but hopefully that was interesting to those of you who have interested in Udyr. And I've actually played him quite a bit in the past. He's a champion I do have some familiarity with. Okay, Warwick, just interface stuff, now displays the range of Hunter's Call and displays the range of Blood Scent. So, not a big deal there, just minor stuff. Bug fix on Zed, fixed a bug when Living Shadow would sometimes cast in a random direction. We'll see when, I still think Zed will get nerfed soonish, because his win rates in competitive play are quite high. He has a very high skill cap. He seems to do poorly in solo queue, but in competitive play, he's emerged as a really strong option. Some of the Korean teams have been jungling Zed and having a great deal of success with jungle Zed. Nashor's Tooth, straight nerf. They just increased the combined cost. This is to go after people that have been rushing Nashor's Tooth. That's typically Kayle, so mid lane Kayle getting hit again. So, sad days for her, probably slowly dropping out of the competitive scene. Spirit of the Elder Lizard, this is just another straight nerf. They've nerfed the unique passive damage, and actually nerfed it rather sizably at both the max and min values. So this is something that, again, Spirit of the Elder Lizard is the key item for Hecarim. It is the item that he uses to jungle. Also useful on champions like Jungle Vi. So not good news for them. They really made use of this item. So like I said, this is really a double whammy for poor Hecarim in this patch. He gets hit to his W, and his key item also got nerfed. And then Malvolon Mortius, they fixed a bug where the shield lasted too long. Okay. This is actually quite nice. Oh, I should mention, while we're on the subject of champions, let me mention Zac briefly. I haven't seen a whole lot of Zac. Have not seen him in game as yet. Have not had a chance to watch him on stream played. I've just watched the champion spotlight. He looks good though. Looks good. Riot has done the exact same thing that always gets them into trouble from a balance perspective. Their worst balance problems were always champions that are monoliths, so they don't have to manage mana. They are able to heal for a percentage of health, and then they just sit and sustain endlessly, and everyone hates it. So remember, if you think of past champions, think of Vlad. Hextech Revolver Vlad, that would just heal himself forever, and you could never kill him. Think of Rengar. When Rengar came out, he had that percentage-based heal. He would just build straight tank, and he would heal himself and build cooldown reduction, and you could never kill him. And now they've released Zac, who has exactly the same issues with his champion kit. He does not use mana. He is just uses a certain amount of his health when he casts his abilities, and then he gets a percentage of his health back, percentage of max health back, when he gets his little bloblets. So it's literally exactly the same thing. I'm just like, Riot, what are you doing? Why do you do this? Like, you just set yourselves up for balance problems. So Zac's kit seems pretty good. The fact that he has basically Anivia's passive part 2, where he comes back to life after he dies if you don't kill his little blobs. The fact that he has a percentage-based heal, based off of max health. I think people are just going to stack health, make it, and just build tanky AP. And his kit's very useful as well. He has, what is it? I have to look back. He has the slow. Oh, he has the ability to. He has the gap closer when he hurls himself. He has a slow. He has a sort of a straight shot damage nuke. I think he's going to be strong. I think he's either going to be a jungler or a mid laner, but actually could even be top laner. I don't know. But anytime you have a monolith champion who can heal for a percentage of their maximum health, it's a balance problem. Inherently, it's a balance problem. So unless his numbers come out and are just like terrible ratios and really low damage, if that's not the case, he's going to be a strong option, and we will probably be seeing him quite a bit. So anyway, I'm a little bit worried that the Karma and the Zac stuff is going to be Riot's typical, hey, look, guys, we've got a new champion, and they're really, really strong, so go out and buy them. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, oh yeah, well, we screwed up. We released a champion that's too powerful by accident, and you guys all went out and bought them, and now we're going to nerf them back to balance. They've said they don't do that, but I'm a little dubious sometimes. I think that they try to release champions that are a little bit overpowered because they want people to buy them. And I mean, I can understand that, but it's a little bit unfortunate. Okay, anyway, some other more general stuff. They have fixed issues with the league point system. Let's see, what have they done? Fixed issues where it would have... Yeah, I've seen this on stream a lot where it appears that players lost league points when they actually won. That's pretty common. They've changed gain and loss calculations, so players should experience more predictable gains and losses rather than big swings. That sounds right. Slightly accelerated gains for teams that perform well consistently. That's to get teams to move up quickly to their correct placement. Minor things, but nice. Nice to see. They've made more sizable changes to matchmaking down below. Turrets. Riot apparently does not like the gameplay that's emerged in Season 3. In competitive play, what you see is the teams will swap. They'll have a 2v1 lane in bottom. They'll have 2v1. And then in top, it'll be 1v2. This is what the competitive teams have been doing. And then at about the 3 to 4 minute mark, when the minion wave hits the tower, there's a 3v1 dive, and they just kill the person that's alone by themselves. And that's pretty much what all of the competitive games have turned into, at least in North America. 1v2 lanes in top and bottom, and then people looking to dive the tower to kill the 1v2 laner. And then sometimes the jungler comes over to stop that, and sometimes they're on the other side of the map trying the same kill. But Riot apparently doesn't like that. So what they're doing is they're buffing turrets. They are buffing turrets to make them deal more damage, so increase damage to champions on the first attack, and increase damage on consecutive attacks. And they've increased that so the damage scales up faster, and the max amount is higher as well. And yes, there is in fact a max amount. They stop scaling at some point, for those who don't know. So this is designed to make it harder to tower dive, because Riot feels like people are getting tower dived, and I really feel like this is a reaction to the competitive play environment, not solo queue competitive play. They've also made it so minions take more damage from towers, so you can't have minions sitting there soaking up damage. So they take more damage and they deal less damage to towers. Same thing across the board. So this is designed to make it easier to defend and make it harder to dive. And I really think this is directed at competitive play. So for us mere mortals who are not on professional teams, be careful about diving towers, because you're going to take more damage than you expect. And if you've played a lot, you sort of have in your head how many shots you can take. That's going to be off for a little bit until you get used to it. Teleport, fixing the visual effects. Fixed a bug where incoming visual effects would disappear. Okay, not a big deal. Fixed a bug where players could not be invited to matchmaking lobbies after teammates miss a ready check. That's actually kind of nice. This may help me in the custom games. We've had some issues with that. Smart casting should be more responsive. Okay, this is the big matchmaking change for AFK detection. This has been requested for about 2 freaking years, and Riot finally put it in. This should have been in the game in 2011, and I'm not exaggerating. It should have been in the game years ago. So when any player fails to select a champion before the timer expires, the game is terminated. Yes, why did this not happen years ago? I don't understand. In the past, somebody's AFK, someone's not there, they get a random champion, and everyone else gets penalized on their team. Totally unfair. Now, finally, the game gets terminated. If you're not there, you don't select the champion, game over. Exactly what they should have done. Why? Why did this take so long? This could not have been that hard to do. Why take so much time? People were calling for this years ago. I'm glad it's here now, but seriously, should have been there ages ago. So if you didn't pick a champion, then you get a Q dodge penalty. Functions exactly the same way as if you just dodged normally. And solo players who did select a champion are returned back to the front of the queue. It's like, yes, thank you, finally. Finally, same deal with arranged teams. Return to the matchmaking queue, game is remade. Draft mode handled on a pick-by-pick basis. If you fail to pick a champion during your turn, the game is terminated immediately. Players later in the draft order are given the benefit of the doubt, not assigned a draft penalty. So, well, yeah, duh, obviously they had nothing to do with it. And it only applies right now to match-made games, doesn't apply to custom games. It's like, okay, great, thank you. So if you don't pick a champion, you're AFK, you're trolling your team, you get a dodge, everybody else is not penalized. It's like, thank you, finally, thank you. So, I mean, I don't even play ranked much, and even I've run into this in the past. Huge problem. Again, I'm glad it's in here. Believe me, I'm glad it's here, but why? Why did it take so long? I mean, this was an obvious problem years and years ago. So, I mean, congrats, I'm glad it's there, but like this should not have taken until March of 2013 when this game came out in 2009 and ranked mode came out in summer 2010. It should not have taken 30 months to implement this. I mean, come on, this is just common sense. If somebody's not there, boot them out and everybody else requeues. End of story. Anyway, well, this is an interesting patch. I mean, I'm looking forward to playing this patch. I wish I had more time to play this game. That's just the sad thing. I just don't have enough time. But I'd love to play this game. I'm interested to seeing Karma. I'm interested in seeing Zac and checking out the changes made to Udyr. Rumble and Hecarim are the two really sad champions in this patch. They were nerfed rather heavily. Well, Hecarim a little bit more so than Rumble, but both of them are not going to be played quite as much. Anyway, though, that's it for this patch. Go out, check out Zac, see what he looks like, check out Karma, and I will see you guys a little bit later. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye. Have a great weekend.